The brutal reality of your life is rarely written in the things you have done, but in the silence of what you are currently maintaining. Most people believe that waiting is a neutral pause, a temporary suspension of gravity before the real work begins. It is a comforting hallucination. In the male mindset, patience is often a mask worn by a decision that has already been made in the dark. You sit at the table, fully dressed and perfectly prepared, watching the clock with a disciplined expression, but the room has already emptied. No one announced their departure. They simply noticed your stillness and moved on. This is the silent power of a choice you refuse to name. You aren't gathering strength. You are practicing the habit of being left behind. Harsh truth arrives without a scream. It arrives as a quiet, empty chair.
The ink in his journal was always fresh, but the narrative had remained frozen for 3 years. In every entry, a specific phrase appeared like a recurring ghost. Once things settled down, he never noticed the repetition. To him, each entry felt like a new strategy, a fresh layer of logic applied to a temporary storm. He didn't see that the storm had become his climate. Most believe that avoidance looks like laziness, a messy room, a slumped posture, a clear lack of intent. But the most dangerous forms of avoidance are meticulously organized. They are built by the intelligent, the disciplined, and the responsible. This is not a collapse of will. It is the architecture of waiting. When you delay a difficult choice, your mind doesn't experience it as a failure of courage. It experiences it as a masterpiece of preparation. You attach your movement to legitimate conditions, financial stability, a shift in the market, a conversation that hasn't happened yet, or a level of readiness that feels just 1 month away. Because these conditions are reasonable, the delay feels responsible. You aren't avoiding your life. You are carefully curating the moment you finally begin it. Beneath the surface, a subtle identity shift occurs. You begin to identify as someone who is about to. This is a functional identity. It allows you to maintain a high self-concept without the burden of evidence. At social gatherings or in the quiet of a midnight internal monologue, you speak of your intentions with the weight of a man who is already halfway there. And because you are technically preparing, the story remains true enough to protect you from the brutal reality of your own stillness. Consider the desk of someone who has mastered this. It is often clean. It is covered in detailed plans, color-coded spreadsheets, and lists that account for every variable of the future. But if you look closer, the plans are entirely silent about today. There is a profound calm in the room, but it is not the calm of peace. It is the calm of suspension, the eerie stillness of a machine that is plugged in, humming with potential, but performing no work. You may have noticed a specific habit lately, rehearsing an explanation for your current position before anyone has even asked for one. You aren't defending yourself against an external critic. You are pacifying the internal witness. That rehearsal is not a defense. It is a confession. It is the sound of the male mindset trying to negotiate with a truth it has already understood. The most durable waiting is performed by those with the best reasons. The higher the quality of your excuse, the more permanent the waiting becomes. Sophistication, after all, is not the same as progress. You have been precise in your avoidance, building a structure so beautiful and so logical that you have forgotten it was meant to be a bridge, not a residence. There is a terrifying comfort in a well-constructed delay. It feels like direction. It feels like you are going somewhere because you are thinking about it so intensely.
But meaning is tied to motion, and motion has no interest in your reasons. The world does not wait for the architecture to be finished. It simply moves on while you are still checking the blueprints. You aren't stuck. You are occupied. And being occupied with the future is the most effective way to stay absent from the present. She never made a grand announcement that she had stopped trying. To the casual observer, she was still there, showing up at the expected hour, speaking the dialect of the ambitious, nodding with practiced precision during the right pauses. She believed her resignation was a private room, a locked cellar where she could harbor her exhaustion without the world ever catching a scent of it. But the brutal reality of human interaction is that we are far more transparent than we dare to imagine. While she was busy maintaining the mask, the people around her had already adjusted their expectations to fit the hollow space she had become. We often operate under the delusion that our internal withdrawal is invisible until we decide to voice it. We believe that as long as we perform the mechanics of engagement, the secret remains safe.
However, the male mindset and social intuition are extraordinarily sensitive instruments. Behavior does not scream at leaks. It manifests in the subtle absence of certain questions, or the way you no longer argue for a better version of a shared project. You aren't being easygoing. You are being absent. This is the silent power of the unsaid. It communicates a finality that words could never achieve. In a boardroom or across a dinner table, this leakage creates a specific, chilling frequency. Imagine the scene. A colleague is speaking, and you are listening, or appearing to. You have the stillness of attention, but it is the wrong kind of stillness. It is the weight of a stone, not the tension of a coiled spring. Across the table, someone glances at you briefly. They don't challenge you. They don't ask if you're okay. They simply register the vacancy, look away, and return to the speaker. In that 1-second glance, a full assessment was completed. The information transferred perfectly. You are no longer a factor. The most dangerous form of resignation is the kind that still shows up. It is a form of dark psychology applied to the self. It convinces you that you are still in the fight because your body is in the room, but your silence has been speaking for months. It has been telling your partner that the intimacy is now a performance. It has been telling your employer that your ceiling has been reached. It has been telling your friends that you are a ghost haunting your own biography. The harsh truth is that authenticity isn't a moral choice. It is a physical reality. Your internal state is a pressurized gas. It will find the smallest crack in your performance, a delayed response, a lack of eye contact, a tone that is too flat, and it will escape. You have been carefully guarding a withdrawal that was never actually guarded. You thought you were protecting your reputation while you waited for a better season, but those around you have already been living in the aftermath of your departure. You may recognize a specific relationship in your life where you are still performing the rituals of investment, yet something beneath the surface stopped breathing a long time ago. You believe you are waiting for the right moment to leave, but you must realize that, to the observers who matter, you have already gone. They have begun responding to the person who left, not the person who is still sitting there. Your silence didn't hide the truth, it broadcasted it. And now, you are left with the quiet vertigo of realizing that the world has already accepted a version of you that you haven't even admitted to yourself yet. He had told the story of his greatest setbacks so many times that the narrative had become smooth, like a stone polished by the sea. It was no longer a memory, it was a map. It explained why he hadn't started the business, why his relationships held a specific, guarded distance, and why certain risks were simply not for him. He didn't realize that the story had ceased to be a chapter in his life, and had become the binding of the entire book. He was no longer a man who had been wounded. He was a man who had become the wound, the brutal reality we rarely discuss. Is that suffering, when held long enough, stops being an affliction and starts becoming an organizing principle. This isn't a failure of will or a sign of weakness. It is a sophisticated psychological maneuver. Your mind, seeking coherence above all else, organizes itself around a point of pain, because that pain provides a stable gravity. To heal would not just mean feeling better. It would mean dismantling a story that has become load-bearing. This is the dark psychology of the self. We would often rather be miserable and certain than healed and unknown. You see this behavior leak into the most ordinary moments. Consider a scene where you are offered exactly what you claim to want. A new position, a genuine reconnection, a path out of the stagnation. There is a visible pulse of consideration. Then you deliver a response that is calm, reasonable, and final. You decline. In the silence that follows, there is no grief. Instead, there is a faint, unsettling recognition that the decision was made years ago. You didn't refuse the opportunity because it was wrong. You refused it because accepting it would have required you to abandon the explanation for why you aren't further along. This is the silent power of the wound. It protects you from the terrifying vacuum of potential. The most resistant wounds are not held because they still hurt. They are held because they organize. They answer the question you've been avoiding. Who are you without the story of what happened to you? Without the injustice, the betrayal, or the failure to lean on? You are forced to stand on the merits of your present self. For many, that is a harsh truth too heavy to carry. You may have felt this before. The moment a plan falls through, or a goal slips away, and beneath the frustration, you feel a surge of relief. That relief is the tell. It is the sound of the male mindset realizing it gets to keep its familiar armor for another season. You are relieved because your identity is safe. You are still the person who would have succeeded, if only for the wound. There is a precision to this that feels almost designed. Perhaps the years spent organized around your pain won't have waste, but a slow hardening. You were being shaped by the wind, prepared for the moment. Finally decide that the cost of the solution, the wound, has exceeded the cost of the original problem. The suffering wasn't a punishment, it was a structure. But every structure eventually outlives its purpose. The door is open, not because the pain is gone, but because you have finally realized that the protection has become a prison. You aren't losing your history by letting go. You are simply refusing to let it be the only thing people see when they look at you. She stood in the center of her own living room and felt like a trespasser. Looking around, she could not identify a single dramatic decision that had brought her to this specific coordinate in time. Every individual choice had been reasonable, practical, even. Each delay was justified. Each compromise was made for the sake of stability. It was only in the aggregate that the direction became visible, and by then, the direction had become her life.
She hadn't crashed into this reality. She had drifted into it, one invisible inch at a time. The brutal reality of a human life is that it is rarely the result of a few grand, heroic choices. It is a mathematical accumulation. We tend to view time spent waiting as a neutral space, a hallway between rooms where nothing of consequence happens. But time is never neutral. It compounds, and it compounds in a specific direction, not toward readiness, but toward the increasing psychological weight of having waited. This is the silent power of the unmade decision. It doesn't just sit there, it gains mass. Our minds are poorly designed to perceive this gradual accretion. We are hardwired to notice the sudden flash of a lightning strike, but we are blind to the rising tide. You can accurately assess a single hour, a single day, or a single conversation. You can tell yourself that this specific moment of scrolling, this specific delay of a difficult task, or this specific silence in a relationship doesn't count.
But the male mindset often falls into the trap of believing that real life is a performance that begins later, once the conditions are perfect. In the meantime, the silence between your intentions is being filled with the bricks of a reality you didn't consciously choose. This is how people arrive at lives they do not recognize. It wasn't built by the things you did. It was built by the decisions you didn't notice yourself making. The ones that felt like waiting, not choosing. The way you speak about yourself in low-stakes conversations. What you do in the first hour of the day when no one is watching and no one is asking for anything. These are not pauses in the narrative. They are the narrative. Consider someone flipping through old photographs, not with nostalgia, but with the quality of archaeological confusion. The images show a progression that feels vaguely foreign. Between the frames, something accumulated that the camera couldn't capture. It wasn't dramatic. It was just continuous. It was the harsh truth of 1,000 small permissions you gave yourself to stay exactly where you were. The life you were currently trying to escape was not an accident. It was a masterpiece of consistency. This realization isn't meant to be an exoneration, nor is it a condemnation. It is a different kind of accountability.
If you were asked how you got here, and your only honest answer is that you aren't quite sure, that is the evidence. It means the accumulation happened beneath the level of your conscious will. The invisibility of the mechanism was what guaranteed its continuation. Seeing it now does not automatically change the trajectory, but it does end the illusion of drift. You are finally forced to face the irreducible tension that your past was shaped by patterns that felt inevitable, and your future will be shaped by the same laws of compounding interest. The weight of the time that has already passed is heavy, but for the first time in years, the silence of the next hour is yours to fill. It hasn't been written by the pattern yet. The room is still as it was before, but the quality of the air has changed. You are still sitting at the table, fully dressed, perfectly prepared for a beginning that you believed required a signal
from the world. But the brutal reality is that no one is coming to announce the start of your life. The silence you've lived in wasn't a hallway. It was the destination. You've spent years calling this patience, but as the screen goes dark, that word feels increasingly hollow. You are left with the harsh truth that the architecture of your waiting was not built by circumstances, but by your own hands, choice by invisible choice. In a few moments you will stand up and return to your routine. You will tell yourself that tomorrow is the day, and you will wait to see if you still believe yourself.